New York City, 1955. A 19-year-old named Carol steps off a bus with a hat box in one hand and an agency address in her pocket. She is entering one of the strictest professions a young woman could choose. 8 rules governed everything, from what she carried to who she could become. Rule number 1, the one almost nobody outside the business knew, explains every other entry. It starts with that hat box. In the 8th place, the hat box was more than a fashion accessory. It was a silent credential, the first test before a model ever spoke. Carol's arrival in New York, clutching her round box and agency address, marked her as a professional in a city that measured readiness in details. The hat box held hats for every season. A pair of gloves folded neatly beside sheer stockings, a compact mirror, powder for touch-ups, low-heeled shoes, and always a sewing kit for the emergencies that could unravel a day's work. Studio doors opened more easily for those carrying one. Production managers recognized the shape before they recognized the face. No agency rulebook spelled out this expectation, yet every working model knew, without a hat box you were only visiting. The box was a portable office, a badge of belonging, and proof that in this trade, preparation was as essential as beauty. Subscribe for more stories behind the rules. Number 7. The unspoken rule was to arrive finished, every inch camera ready before a single light was switched on. In the New York studios of 1955, a model's day began long before she reached the door. Hair set and brushed smooth, makeup applied in careful neutral tones, nails buffed and clean. The look was never showy. Glamour belonged to the set, not the street. Even for commercial bookings, the expectation was clear. Walk in as if the shoot could start at any moment with no need for a stylist's rescue. Punctuality was as much a part of this ritual as the grooming itself. Arriving early meant you were reliable. Late arrivals risked a black mark in the agency's log. The discipline echoed in the Barbizon School's famous slogan, "Be a model, or just look like one." For many, these habits began as classroom lessons but quickly became the quiet customs of the trade, marking the difference between a hopeful and a professional. Number 6. The comp card turned a model's body into business data. In the world of 1955 New York, this small, glossy rectangle was more than a calling card. It was a portable resume, a silent contract between model, agency, and client. Each card paired a headshot with a careful ledger of facts: height, weight, bust, waist, hips, eye color, hair color, shoe size, sometimes even ring size, all typed in neat columns below the photographs. Agencies insisted the numbers be exact. A quarter-inch gained or lost could mean a trip to the scale, a note in the agency log, or a quiet warning from the booker. For clients, the card was a promise. What you saw on paper was what would step through the studio door, but the real pressure came after the print set. Models lived with the knowledge that their bodies must remain in perfect agreement with the card at all times. The comp card system, written and standardized, gave agencies a tool for swift comparison and selection. Yet it was the unwritten expectation, the demand to match those numbers day after day, that set the true boundary between hopefuls and professionals. Number 5. The name was not always hers. In the polished world of 1955 New York modeling, a name could be as carefully constructed as a composite card or a runway walk. Dorothy Virginia Margaret Juba stepped into the industry and emerged as Dovima, a single, elegant invention drawn from the first letters of her 3 given names. The transformation was more than vanity, it was branding, a subtle contract between agency and client, model and magazine. Dovima's mononym became a signature, instantly memorable, designed to stand out in a crowded market. For others, the change was even less personal. Candy Jones was born Jessica Arlene Wilcox, but her agency suggested a new identity, and with one clerical slip, she became Candy Jones forever. These were not isolated whims, but a semi-formal business practice. Agencies understood that a name could sell as surely as a face. Here, the shift becomes clear. The first 4 rules belonged to the model herself, but from this point forward, the business would shape not just her image, but her very identity. Number 4. Control left the mirror and entered the model's private hours. Eileen Ford, who founded Ford Models in 1946, offered more than bookings. She offered supervision. Young women arriving from out of town were invited into the Ford family's own home, a townhouse on the Upper East Side, where the agency's authority extended well beyond office hours. The rules were printed and enforced: a nightly curfew, the presence of an approved chaperone for any evening outing, and a quiet expectation that the front door would close at a decent hour. Dismissal could follow a single infraction. These were not just suggestions, but the terms of a career. At Ford, the agency's reputation was bound to the girls' conduct, and the house rules stood as a guarantee to anxious parents and cautious clients alike. Other agencies used similar arrangements, such as registered boarding houses, contracts with curfew clauses, and city filings that made supervision official. Yet nowhere was the line between professional image and private life more closely guarded than at Ford's own dinner table. Respectability in this world was something to be managed as carefully as a hemline or a headline. Number 3, the most whispered rule in the 1950s modeling world: never date the photographer. No agency contract spelled it out, yet every working model understood that a reputation could be made or lost in the space between the studio lights and the city's gossip columns. The line between professional and personal was drawn in silence, not ink. A model who became too familiar with a photographer or allowed herself to be seen as anything other than strictly business risked more than just awkwardness. She risked being judged unserious, or worse, untrustworthy. Discretion was the unwritten currency. In an industry built on appearances, visible romance could cloud a client's faith in a model's reliability. Even when agency matrons were not watching, the code policed itself through rumor and sidelong glances. For Carol and her peers, the lesson was clear. In a business where reputation was the product, protecting the boundary between work and affection was as vital as any written rule. Number 2, the clock was always running. In the world of modeling in the 1950s, time was the most precious and unforgiving currency. Susie Parker's name echoed through the industry as the first model reported to earn $100,000 in a single year, a sum that transformed the profession's image overnight. Yet even at that rarefied height, the celebration came with a shadow. Modeling offered a window of opportunity that opened early and closed fast. Most careers faded by the late 20s, sometimes sooner, as agencies and clients turned their gaze to ever younger faces. This wasn't a rule written in any agency handbook, but it was enforced by the market itself, a silent agreement that youth was the only lasting asset. The briefness of a model's earning years mirrored the age ceilings placed on airline stewardesses, who were routinely required to retire by 30. For Carol and her peers, every day in the studio felt like a race against the calendar, a reminder that beauty in this business was as perishable as the seasons. The rewards could be dazzling, but the clock never stopped. And finally, in first place, reputation was the product. Every rule, whether written in the agency log or whispered in the hallway, circled back to this single truth. Before the war, modeling in America carried a shadow. It was seen as a halfway world, closer to the nightclub than the boardroom. Agencies like Ford and Barbizon set out to change that, not just by polishing appearances, but by manufacturing trust. A model's conduct, her punctuality, her measured silence, the way she carried her hat box or refused a photographer's invitation, became as much a commodity as her face. Comp cards listed measurements down to the quarter inch, a formal promise to clients that what they hired was exactly what they would get. House rules, curfews, and chaperones reassured anxious parents that their daughters were safe, while the Barbizon slogan, "Be a model or just look like one," offered the illusion of glamour wrapped in the language of respectability. The unwritten customs, like never dating on the job or never arriving unprepared, policed the invisible boundaries of the profession. Even a name could be remade. Dorothy Virginia Margaret Juba became Dovima, and Jessica Wilcox became Candy Jones, because the agency understood that a model's identity was part of the brand. For those who made it, like Susie Parker with her record-breaking $100,000 year, or Dovima, the $1-a-minute girl, the reward was more than a paycheck. It was the fragile privilege of being trusted in a world that had once doubted every woman in their shoes. Outside the agency door, Carol stands with her hat box, about to discover that modeling in 1955 was never simply about being seen, but about being believed. Across all 8 rules, a quiet truth lingers. 1950s modeling was never just about beauty. With Davima's name changed, Barbizon's groomed for success promise, and Eileen Ford's house rules, every detail, from hatbox to curfew, served something deeper. Reputation became currency. The woman became the brand. Which of these rules would have surprised you most? Subscribe for more forgotten history of how women really lived and worked.